Hello and welcome back to another fantasy football video. Hope everyone is doing well. It has been an eventful game week 14 with Haaland being benched, Arsenal shipping 5 past Forest and Chelsea conceding 2 own goals in a 4-1 defeat to Brighton. There is plenty to discuss with Ivan Toney picking up his 5th yellow card of the season, meaning he will miss the Forest game in game week 15. Saka being potentially injured and another lackluster performance from Liverpool. Do we potentially take out Salah after only recently bringing him in? Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below the potential transfers or the transfers that you have already made in the comments down below. And let's get straight on into this one. So the first player that we are looking at is Callum Wilson from Newcastle, a potential Toney replacement. Newcastle beating Aston Villa 4-0 with what was quite a comfortable win on Tyneside for them. Callum Wilson coming in at 7.4 million, only 0.1 million less than Toney. Seems like a potentially ideal replacement. As you can see there from Wilson's heat map, he's getting himself very far forward. The only player being farther forward is Miguel Almiron. Wilson stepped up and comfortably buried a penalty and also got himself another goal and an assist, sweeping the 3 bonus points up to total 19 points in that Aston Villa game. He then goes on to play Southampton and Chelsea, which I would say are arguably quite good fixtures. Southampton are a side that have been struggling defensively so far this season, and Chelsea a side that have literally just shipped 4 goals against Brighton, especially with that game being at home. Newcastle having very good home form thus far this season. I think it could be a couple of fixtures that Callum Wilson does do very well in. He's got 53 points so far this season with an expected goals of 0.85. That is extremely high in comparison to a lot of other forwards. You know, he's ahead of the likes of Mo Salah, Mitrovic. Only the likes of Kane and Haaland are really ahead of him. An expected assist of 0.12, taking an expected goal contribution a game up to 0.97. He scored 6 goals and got 2 assists thus far this season, and that is impressive considering he's missed 4 games. So he's only actually played 9. So he's actually only 1 goal contribution off averaging 1 goal contribution a game. Now, in terms of the downsides of owning Callum Wilson is that he is injury prone. But with the fact that we are looking at only the next 2 fixtures, really, because that Leicester game is post-World Cup and we get a wild card, so only really the next 2 games matter. I think as long as we don't get any news that he's injured before that Southampton game, it is a pretty good transfer, and I think the most popular transfer thus far this game week has been Ivan Toney to Wilson, very understandably, as Wilson looks like one of the best options going into game week 15. Next, a player that I do have my eye on is Conor Coady of Everton. Everton, a side that over the past few game weeks have been looking a lot more defensively secure at the back. Now they play against Leicester and Bournemouth in their next 2. Leicester, a side that going forward are a decent team but have been struggling to convert their chances and get the ball into the back of the net in the last couple of games. Bournemouth, a side that have been scoring goals but are consistently outperforming their expected goals, and you would expect that to drop off at some point. Coming in at 4.7 million, he could be an ideal replacement for the likes of Gahey or Anderson from Crystal Palace. I know a lot of people have brought those guys in, and they now have 2 away fixtures coming up, or even Eric Dyer. Dyer getting benched against Bournemouth, which is pretty unfortunate for plenty of owners, including myself, that he got benched in that game, and then Dyer goes and plays against Liverpool. So I feel like Coady could be a nice little replacement for either of those guys. Scoring 51 points so far this season. He's having a pretty decent season. Now, Everton are actually 3rd highest in expected goals conceded. So that is, they are the 3rd worst in terms of, you know, how many goals they're expected to get scored against them, which is not ideal. But the likes of Coady, the likes of Tarkowski have really shored that defence off, and Pickford makes some stellar staves, especially in that Fulham game, keeping Willian out and basically securing the clean sheet for them. He does pick up the odd attacking contribution. He scored a goal and got an assist so far this season. We're not necessarily expecting goal returns from him. As you can see there, his expected goal return is 0.05. He's done pretty decently so far for bonus points, picking up 5 thus far this season. In terms of downsides from Coady, I guess the main thing is that you're only really expecting a maximum of probably 6 points, maybe 7 if he does get a clean sheet. Is it really worth using that free transfer on on Coady when you could go for someone potentially a little bit more exciting like Wilson or one of the other players that we will come to. I guess it just depends on your sort of style and how you want to play the game. Next, we're looking at a potential Salah replacement. I feel like many Salah owners will be potentially frustrated. He did score in the previous game against Leeds, but prior to that, blanking against Nottingham Forest and only actually picking up 7 points against Leeds when he could have got a lot more. A lot of owners will be frustrated, especially with De Bruyne having picked up 11 points against Leicester, scoring an absolutely stunning free kick that just clipped the inside of the post. De Bruyne has very nice fixtures as well coming up with Fulham at home and Brentford at home. You'd very much expect him to do well in those games. Coming in at 12.4 million, he's still cheaper than Salah, so you should be able to make that move quite easily. You can see there from his heat map, the number 17, that he's basically playing alongside Alvarez, getting extremely far forward, and as we've seen so far this season, that has corresponded in attack and return, scoring 81 points so far this season. He's having a solid season with an expected goal return of 0.21, expected assist of 0.58. Is he potentially outscoring his expected stats? He has picked up 3 goals and 9 assists thus far, averaging a goal return a game for Manchester City. The only downside I would say with De Bruyne is the potential of rotation. Now, we have seen Phil Foden being benched in the last couple of games. Could Foden come in for De Bruyne? I think that's quite unlikely considering they do play kind of different positions, but you never know with Pep how he's going to kind of move that team about. Now, do you make that Salah to De Bruyne move? I think is the big question, because Salah could quite easily, go and outscore De Bruyne in the next couple of weeks, playing at Spurs away and Leeds at home. They're not the worst fixtures. I would say that a lot of people this week will have other transfers that they need to put ahead of this transfer. For example, getting rid of the likes of Ivan Toney, or getting rid of maybe another player that is injured or not available for Game Week 15. If you do have the free transfer to make that you are able to do Salah to De Bruyne, I would make that move just because these 2 home fixtures for De Bruyne do look pretty tidy. With that being said, you're most likely not going to be captaining De Bruyne. Now, if Haaland is out come Game Week 15, it could be a really nice move. If we do get the news that Haaland is going to be out for another game week, it could be a really nice move because you can then lob the captaincy onto De Bruyne, and De Bruyne is a much better captaincy option than Salah going into Game Week 15. And if we do get that news, although I want to get rid of Ivan Toney, as De Bruyne will be the better captaincy option, I could potentially see myself doing that. Now, the next player is Leandro Trossard of Brighton. This is a player that you could potentially replace with Bukayo Saka. You could potentially even move back to Phil Foden. I myself went from Trossard to Foden, then to Saka. Had I just held on to Trossard, I would be doing a lot better at the minute. But hey ho, it's just unfortunate with the way that the cookie crumbles, that Saka went off injured when his replacement Nelson came on and scored 2 goals and assists. That could have potentially been Saka. But now he's injured. We're obviously waiting for news, but quite likely that he's at least going to miss the next game against Chelsea. Trossard, as you can see from his heat map there, against Chelsea was getting extremely far forward and the most central player on the pitch for Brighton, picking up some very attacking position, scoring 73 points so far this season, with an expected goal return of 0.46 and expected assist of 0.17. His goals kind of represent the stats there, scoring 7 goals and 1 assist in 12 games thus far this season. Now, will this form continue is the big question. Trossard has been a player so far this season that has been scoring in the games that you don't necessarily expect him to score, scoring against the likes of Chelsea, Manchester City, the likes of Liverpool as well, and then not scoring against the likes of Nottingham Forest, for example. Now, that is perfectly fine if you're willing to hold on to Trossard for a long period of time, but we are only considering the next 2 game weeks. Now, on paper, you would look at these 2 games and go, okay, Wolves away and Aston Villa at home, pretty decent fixtures. I think that Trossard is going to score. I think the Wolves away game will be quite tough for them. Wolves at home have been a reasonably defensive side so far this season, so we may not see Trossard scoring that game. Aston Villa at home, though, after just conceding 4 goals against Newcastle, I can definitely see Trossard picking up a goal in that game. So I guess it just depends. What is the kind of priority in terms of the transfers that you need to make? if you need to ship Saka out to get that 11 man, to get another player in and playing in your team, I think that Trossard could potentially be the best option. You could even go back to Phil Foden because he does have those 2 home games, as we just discussed, with De Bruyne against Fulham and Brentford, and you can't see Foden getting benched for 3 games in a row. I think that would be quite harsh from Pep, but they do have Champions League games that Pep is obviously trying to prioritise as well. Or you could go for Marcus Rashford, scoring a goal against West Ham. He's looking on pretty decent form as well, so there are actually plenty of players to consider in this position, but Trossard has been the one that has kind of been showing the most consistent form thus far this season. Then finally, I thought I'd just lob a little punt in there, and we've gone for Calvert-Lewin of Everton, playing against Leicester and Bournemouth, as mentioned, with Conor Coady. He's only picked up 13 points thus far this season, but he's only played in a handful of games. 2 or 3 games he's played in so far this season, so you wouldn't necessarily be expecting him to score that many points. He's only scored 1 goal and got an expected goals of 0.33, and actually not even expected an assist at all. You can see there on the heat map, compared to some of the other attacking players, Everton's attacking players are a little bit further back than a lot of the other teams, but Calvert-Lewin is one of the farthest forward and also pretty central as well. You would expect that if Everton were to win a penalty, that Calvert-Lewin would be the one stepping up and taking it. Before he got injured, he was the one on the penalties, so I'd very much expect him to take them, especially now that Richarlison has left the club. I think that Calvert-Lewin is a bit of a punt. Wilson, for me, is the better option with the scoring form that he has been on, and just the fact that Newcastle are generally a better team. But if you do fancy a bit of a punt, Leicester at home and Bournemouth away, 2 sides that have been conceding plenty of goals this season, you could find yourself getting a little bit lucky if you go for DCL instead. Now that rounds up this little player watch list ahead of game week 15. Let me know down in the comments any of the other players that you're potentially bringing in as well. I think the big decision for me this game week is going to be who out of Toney and Saka do I get rid of, or if Haaland does, or if we do get the news that Haaland is injured, do we potentially then go for Kevin De Bruyne for the captaincy option as well? All to be decided throughout this coming game week. Do hit that like button if you have enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.